It's Ken from Skynet. In this video, we're going to continue our discussion of the Cogent DataHub version 11 security model. In particular, we're going to discuss multi-factor authentication, and we're going to practice configuring user accounts to use time-based one-time passwords, or TOTP. Traditionally, authentication has been simple, relying on username and password. DataHub version 11 supports MFA by handling evidence like something I know, for example, a password, something I have, for example, a TOTP code and a mobile authenticator app, something I am, for example, client captured fingerprint or other biometric data from the authenticator app, where I'm connecting from, like a source IP address, and how I'm connecting, like a connection context interface or protocol, for example, TCP or OPC UA. In order to configure TOTP authentication, we assign the user principal to the role require TOTP authentication. And that will allow us to then set a TOTP key. And this will require as well pairing with an authenticator app like Microsoft Authenticator or Google Authenticator. And then when we log in, the user needs to enter their password suffixed with the TOTP code. In this practice, we're going to use the following scenario. I want to add two new user accounts. RC user needs access to the remote config application, and WV user needs access to WebView. We're going to configure TOTP authentication for each of these user accounts and then configure permissions appropriately. So let's get started. I'm going to return to my DataHub security user interface, and I'll start by adding the RC user account. It is a built-in account, and I will add a password of ABCD1234. Let me just check that. Good. And do the same thing. Remembering that I should generally use a complex password that includes uppercase, lowercase, numbers, etc. I'll hit OK on that, noting that by default, the roles of basic connectivity and required TOTP authentication are on. And so you'll see here that the RC user account does expect and support TOTP. It's not currently set, so we'll add a TOTP key. We really don't need to worry about a specific key. I'm happy to just generate a random key for this account. And then I should be able to show that QR code. We'll come back to that piece in a second. I also want to make sure that this particular user account and this principal has access to remote config. So I'm going to turn on or make this principal a member of the remote config role. The other thing I'm going to do is recognize that in the Microsoft Authenticator app, which is what I'm going to use in my phone, there is an opportunity to specify here in DataHub what the TOT application name is. So just for illustration, I'm going to change it from Cogent DataHub to just call it My DataHub. And I'm then going to apply those settings. So that has now committed the new RC user account, the TOTP configuration, as well as the change to the setting. And I'm now going to again show that TOTP QR code and prepare that to be used or added, if you will, to my Microsoft Authenticator app. So I've got my Microsoft Authenticator app running on my mobile device, and I'm just going to use the Windows 11 wireless display feature so that I can actually kind of emulate what's happening on my phone. So I'll just drag this over onto here. So essentially that's what I'm seeing on my phone right now. And I want to use the Microsoft Authenticator app to add a new work or school account. And I'm going to scan a QR code. And as I now point that at the QR code on my screen, I can see that it has accepted that entry And as I have a look at the bottom of my list, I can see that I, in fact, have my new RC user account configured in Authenticator with the name My DataHub and the name of the actual account. And of course, I've got my 6-digit one-time password code cycling through there. Let me just move that off to my other monitor, and I am now finished with the QR code display in DataHub, and I should be able to now get this working through remote config. So let me just minimize or close these things, and I'm now going to jump over to remote config. So using our installed remote config program, launch that, and I should now be able to log in with RC user to my local host running on whatever port DataHub is running on. Our web server right now is configured to run on port 80, and I'm going to enter the password ABCD1234, but I also need to enter my TOTP. And so I'm going to jump back to my application, and I'm going to look at my code, and I'm going to enter it, 772637, and hit enter. And you'll notice that if the client app does not support separating the password and TOTP fields, you can just concatenate those together in the password field, and that should work. So we've now successfully logged in using our remote config username, password, and our 6-digit TOTP. And I can see that I have access to things like the event log, as well as my data browser. And so if I look at my data domains in my data browser, I can see there's DataPid1. I don't have any data right now, but I can see that, for example, if I start my DataPid program, I can see that I have good data. I'll just minimize DataPid, but I can see that the data is there. So now that we have started remote config, I want to add my second user account. I'm going to do this one this time using the remote config UI instead of the native UI. The UIs are virtually identical, the difference being that in the native UI, we click the configure button to pop up the properties window, and in remote config, it's natively embedded within the plugin environment here. So I'm going to add a new account, just as I did before. I'm going to add, in this case, WV user, and I'm not going to worry about having a different password. I'm going to use, again, ABCD 1234. Again, I'm going to expect a basic connectivity and require TOTP authentication membership. I'm going to add a TOTP key. Again, I'm going to generate a random key. And for the time being, despite wanting this to be a WebView user, I'm not going to yet add the WebView role membership because I want to illustrate what happens when you don't have the appropriate permissions. So for now, I'm just going to hit apply on that. And I'm again going to configure this account using my Microsoft Authenticator account, Microsoft Authenticator app on my mobile device. So there is the QR code for that. And I'm going to once again jump back onto my phone. This time I won't bother sharing my screen, but I'm just choosing to add another work or school account. I'm scanning my QR code. That's been accepted. I now have that second WV user account showing up in Microsoft Authenticator. So I should be able to close that. And this time, let's just minimize here and start WebView. And I'm going to try logging in with just my password. So the username is going to be WV user. The password is ABCD1234, and I'm purposefully not putting in my TOTP code, and I'm going to try to log in. And you'll notice that I get a message of invalid credentials. So a generic login failure message, which is what I expect. I'm going to now consult my Microsoft Authenticator app, and I'm going to type in the 6-digit code. And again, try to log in. And you'll notice the message is slightly different. This time it says the login failed because the user is not authorized to connect. Well, of course, we recall that when we were configuring this WV user account, we added the principal to the basic connectivity and required TOTP authentication rules, but we had not given it access to WebView, and I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to look at the available roles, and I'm going to choose WebView, and I'm going to choose All Data Reader. And so my WV user account now has access to WebView and to all data. So now we should be able to log in. So I will return to my WebView login screen. I've got my password in there, and I'm going to enter 808. 880, enter my TOTP, and this time when we log in, we definitely are able to authenticate correctly, and we can see that we've got the WebView interface here. I should be able to open one of the demo pages. For example, I'm going to open circular gauges, and I can see that I actually have real data here, and that's a consequence of having DataPid running. I can see that that's the case because if I pause DataPid, all of my data stops. Start that again. You'll also notice that when I go into run mode here and I attempt to adjust my set point, it doesn't have an impact on any of the gauges. I'll do that again. I'm going to drag that around, and that's because the set point change is not being written to the back end. And again, that's a consequence of recognizing that I've specified the WV user account, or I've granted the WV user account only read permissions to the data domains. And that's because I've added it to the all data reader role as opposed to a full access role. So in this video, we've seen how to add user accounts and the impact of using multi-factor authentication. And in particular, we've configured a couple accounts to use TOTP, set those up on the Microsoft Authenticator app, and successfully authenticated using those accounts. Thanks for watching.